So, I'm coming across this issue that I've seen just repeatedly recently. And apparently, and this is something I was not aware of, the black community has a serious, significant problem with their self-confidence. Like, there is a lot of self-hatred, and there's a lot of victimhood narratives, and there is a lot of, white people are the problem, the cause of all my problems, or society is the problem. All these external forces are the cause of my problems, not myself. And, I think when you get to a point where you're being told repeatedly that you are not the problem, but you also can't fix it, that really breaks down your self-confidence. Where, meanwhile, us white people, we're constantly being told, you're a fucking shitty person, you're doing this, and this wrong. And so what do? We sit there, and we prostrate ourselves, and we flay ourselves open on the fucking cross of political correctness to make you fuckers happy. Trust me, we don't do it because of us. We do it because we want to make you happy, because you guys call us racist. But we have to sacrifice over and over and over again because we are held to such a high standard. Like, it is a ridiculously high standard that white people are held to. Like, literally everything we think, do, and say is racist, and therefore the standard by which we were held to not be racist is an impossible standard. And it also clearly shows that these people think that we are better than them. Like, they have no conception of the idea that perhaps they themselves should not be racist, but expect us to be not racist. But then, even when we're not showing the racist markers, such as, racist thoughts, racist behavior, racist language, anything like that, they still want to call you racist. It's really weird. So it's very much this externalizing of their own problems, which I think is leading to a serious issue with their self-confidence. That, in correlation with, the history of black society in the United States. And I want to talk about, specifically black people in the United States, because this is where I'm seeing it occur so much in the media and stuff like that. Where these women, I just watched this video, these black women, they needed a no whites allowed vacation. I'm just this is some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. It's these women, they're talking about how white people have forced them out of their country because they feel so uncomfortable. And I sit there and I laugh because to me it's like all these women, by the way, were mixed. They were not yeah, I can tell that person's fucking African, he's dark, dude. No, they were all clearly mixed. They were all clearly, recently mixed as well within their generational lines. Each of these girls in this video looked, I don't know, remarkably like they had white features. I don't know. And so, they're also sitting there going, well, I don't feel comfortable in my own society and all this stuff. And it's white people's fault. It's not my fault. It's white people's fault. It's not my fault that I'm so obsessed with my race. It's white people's fault. I know I'm being obnoxious. But it's just why? Why is it my fault that you feel uncomfortable around me because there's not other people who look like you? I'm sorry, go live somewhere else. If that really is the case, move to Atlanta, Georgia or something like that. There's a ton of black people there, and they're dark because they, quite frankly, if you are repetitively bred in an area where there is a lack of sunlight or something like that, you're going to get progressively paler. It's just going to happen epigenetically. If there's not a use for the melanin in your skin, you're going to lose it. That's why white people turned white. That's why if you take an Italian, somebody from the south of from a family from southern Italy, and move them to like Maine, right? And you let them procreate for a couple generations, what's going to happen? Their olive toned skin's going to rapidly disappear, and they're going to become very, very pale. It's just what happens. Now, once you reintroduce them back into sunlight, they might tan up really well, but they're going to progressively get paler and paler. It's an epigenetic thing. I want to go into the history of black society in the United States a little bit, just because, like, it has fed into the whole victim narrative, which has been so destructive for the self-confidence of black people in the United States. Like, the whole Wakanda thing. The whole, Black Panther, Wakanda, we was kings, sort of thing. That whole deal just seems, like they're crying out for some sort of hero figure, mythological hero figure that they're crying out to just hold on to, because and part of it is that they've been told that white culture is against them. Right, so anything related to white people or white culture, any sort of white stability, any sort of white ethics, anything like that, they're told is not for them. So I find absolutely disgusting, considering the fact that ideas are for everybody. They are not just for one race of people. It is not just for the people who came up with the idea, this whole concept of cultural appropriation. Like, I wish more people would appropriate Western civilization principles and values, such as responsibility, hard work, freedom, tolerance, those sorts of things, compassion, kindness, generosity, charity, things like that, instead of the barbarous nature of, say, like something like Islam, which is all about conquer and destroy and consume. And so if white culture and which popped out of Christianity, which actually is a Middle Eastern religion, which I don't know if you guys know this, but I've spent some time reading the Bible. I've spent some time looking into the Mahabharata. I've spent some time in my college classes looking at different religions. They're all influenced by one another. If you look at Christianity, which is influenced by Judaism, it's all really interconnected. And if you start exploring like the Mahabharata, you start thinking to yourself, what really is the difference between the different religions other than the stories that they tell? And the story in those Far Eastern religions was about, the balance between order and chaos, and seeking balance between the two, and all the things that can happen if you don't have balance between the two of those things. And then you come across the Christian religion, and the Christian religion is all about get out there and fucking do something. And I'm going back to Judaism. Judaism is very much the whole thing with Moses is just Moses and what's his face? Abraham. It was all about just do it, just start. It doesn't matter what you do, but you have to do it first. Like, you can't just be immobile. Like, well, let's figure out the rest of it later, but let's do something first. And so, you can accomplish amazing things, but it's like the same my dad always told me. The difficult is done immediately. The impossible only takes a little longer. And I don't know if it must have been an Army or Air Force saying, or maybe it was, I don't know. I don't have any idea where he got that one. My whole point with all of this, though, is that there are so many good things like persistence and responsibility and morality and kindness and compassion and healing that come out of these things that are seemingly white, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous. The white people were fucking barbarians before Christianity came through and conquered them. Like, have you seen what sort of paganistic shit white people were up to before we were tamed by the ideas of Christianity and the ideas of compassion and a lot of subjugation by the sword and Roman rule? Like, the Romans came through and they were like, these people were fucking barbarians. We were so much barbarians that they didn't even want to fucking battle us at one point in England, you know what I mean? Like, white people were fucking vicious barbarians, just like the rest of the world. We are not special. We just were smarter, you know? We saw what the Romans were doing. We're like, you know, we English, we can do that better. And guess what they fucking did? They took the Roman model and they spread it all over the world in the colonial age, which actually civilized the world for the rest of you savages. You have Rome to thank for that, by the way. Rome came into the savages of England, and the savages of England turned into the Romans, and then they spread it all over the fucking place. That's Western civilization. It's a benevolent cancer that wants to transform the world into an idyllic spot for people like me to live. And, so, black people are being told repeatedly that all these ideas, balance between order and chaos, responsibility, compassion, kindness, a rejection of savagery, they're being told that that's just wrong, that that's not for them. You know what I mean? And so they don't have a hero mythology. Western civilization has one really strong example. Regardless of whether or not you are a Christian, you know who Jesus is. Like, there's just no escaping that archetype in our society, in this Western civilization. And black people don't have that. It's been cut off from them. And then on top of that, they were actually slaves in our country. There were plenty of them that were slaves in our country. And the thing is that once the war was won and they were victorious, that should have been a turnaround, right? But it wasn't. What happened instead was the politicians used black people as a prop for propaganda and for their own malicious intents. And they wanted to subjugate these people in some cases. I have no love for the government. And that doesn't mean that I am responsible for what the government did, though. I abhor all the Jim Crow laws, because the Jim Crow laws made it so difficult for these people who had just come out of slavery to rise themselves out of poverty. And then you get the implementation of the welfare state. You know, after you get rid of the Jim Crow laws with the civil rights movement and stuff like that, and you make discrimination illegal, and you get rid of segregation and stuff like that, then at that point, they implemented the welfare state, which of course ruined the black family completely. You know, providing welfare to women is just always a bad idea, because it leads to the ability for women to become single mothers. And if you allow for the ability of that, then there's going to be more women who choose to do it, and the more women who choose to do it, the more socially acceptable it becomes, the more women who will choose to do it. And the more women who do choose to do it, the more children are raised in single mother households. And then those children don't know how to form stable, lasting connections with people, because they don't have two parents who are bonded, right? who are partners, who have a stable, healthy relationship that has lasted for a really long time, where there is commitment and love. And so these children are unfortunately being raised in households where there's not stability. And sometimes when the mother is morally reprehensible, there's a parade of men who come through the household just fucking things up for the kids repeatedly. And it's oftentimes a very abusive and neglectful situation. I'm not saying all, but a lot of times it is. And I've seen not just, and this is not a black problem, by the way. This is not a black problem. This is a problem that plagues every race in this country. Okay? The welfare state has taken its toll on everyone. It's just there happens to be more white people, and the welfare state was less targeted at us early on. So we haven't suffered nearly as much as black people. But at the same time, welfare, regardless of who it impacts the same way, and it is the same destructive force. And so, also, I think as a result, like, how many young gentlemen who are black have a strong father figure to look up to? Like, I've been thinking about this a lot. You know, your children, when they come out of your womb, they don't know anything of the world. You are essentially their God. And if you have a stable mother and a stable father, then you have this really good concept of what a proper God should be like, because you have both halves of what should be a partnership. A stable, loving, healthy partnership. And that in turn instills, you know, a sense of self-worth. Because if your parents are worth it to each other to stay together, and you're worth it for them to deal with all the shit that comes with being in a relationship, if you are worth it to them to stay together, that's a huge boost to self-confidence. And so right now, we're at this situation in our society where black people have no confidence. They don't know that they are actually powerful human beings. I think about this over and over again. You know, like, compared to an animal, we are a god, essentially. Look at even the background of my house. Like, look at this. We take ancient, decayed, putrefied, or whatever the fuck, plant material that has fossilized and turned into this really dense chains of I don't know if they're carbohydrates or some sort of explosive sort of material, and transform it into a stable shape that we can literally shape into anything that we fucking want to shape. Look at this. This is made out of the same shit that is. It's fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing. We are fucking gods. Like, I don't think... I'm speaking into a little portal on my table that lets me speak to the entire world if they choose to click on this video. You know, like... It's pretty fucking amazing, the society that we live in, you know? And... you know, I think part of the issue is that there has been a push to convince people in general that we're just animals. And there's been even more of this push where I don't know where it's coming from. The only thing I can think of, because I don't see overt racism in my society. I just don't see it. I don't see it in the media except for against white people. You know, and so the only thing I can think is that the discussion about the racism is actually what's causing the current day feelings of, you know, lack of self-worth, you know, like, especially in kids who actually do have some privilege and actually are, in stable households and stuff like that. But there is this really big discussion right now going on about white racism, right? So racism by white people against black people. And it's been a discussion that's been happening for a long time. It was happening for quite a while, you know, during the civil rights and all that shit and so on and so forth. And it hasn't really gone away. But recently, it's gotten worse, you know? It's whenever, anytime a cop kills a black person, the assumption is always that the black person has been shot because they're black or something like that. And it's something that the media tends to push, and I don't understand it, but it's part of it. But then, regardless of what the actual reasoning was, there's always this discussion about cop violence against black people. And so it's this weird situation where the facts of in reality of the situation don't actually matter. What is having the biggest impact on the narrative and on the state of mind of these people has to do with the discussion afterwards. Regardless of what happened. It could be the black guy pulled out a gun on the cop and was like, I'm gonna shoot you in the fucking face, you asshole. And the cop, like, shot him. Because, fuck that, he doesn't want to get shot. But even if it was that, you know, like, there's a good chance that the media would still have this conversation about racism against black people. And the discussion itself, regardless of the actual facts of the situation, is what is, I think, so fucking detrimental. It makes them feel like they are persecuted. And so the media and all these quote-unquote black people who are pushing these narratives and these discussions, they're really harming their own cause, and they're really harming the self-confidence of their own people. Like, it kills me to see these people like this. I don't like this at all. Like, I'm a very compassionate person, regardless of whether you're white or black. Like, dude, have some self-confidence. Like I'm saying, like, we're literally like gods. Like, look at this. I have a cup, which I formed. Well, I didn't form it, but somebody formed it. Out of clay, into a pleasing shape and a pleasing color, with a handle for convenience. And it holds hot liquids without burning my hands. And the hot liquid inside happens to be made out of a plant which grows in South America. Just saying. Like, dude, the mere fact that you are a human being with a mind and hands that can create and creativity that just needs to be unlocked, and potential that you should be trying to live up to. It's an amazing thing to be a human being. And they don't see it. Because they're told that they're victims, they're told that they're persecuted, and they don't have any heroes to look up to. Their heroes were taken from them. You know? You have Martin Luther King Jr., who was shot, assassinated. He could have led to peace. And then there was Malcolm X, who was also assassinated. And I believe, actually, Malcolm X was starting to turn away from the whole sort of black separatist ideology at the time of his death. So that might have been a catalyst for why he may have been killed. At least that's what I remember happening. If I'm wrong, don't hate me too much on that one. That's just what I remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've actually learned about Malcolm X. But I got the impression that towards the end of his time, he was getting awful frustrated with the violence and whatnot. And was kind of starting to turn away from that, which might have led to his death, quite frankly. So, you know, black people haven't been allowed in the narrative of this country to have any sort of peace, any sort of prosperity, any sort of victor. And so, like, I wish I could bring somebody out like Steve Harvey to just you know, and I know Steve Harvey does outwork Reach with, you know, young black men and stuff like that, doing this sort of thing to bring some sort of, like, self-confidence. But, like, the thing is that, you know, black people need to have role models. And maybe this also goes back to, you know, like, the Bill Cosby thing. Like, Bill Cosby was that example of a strong, father figure who was actually good and stable for his family, and then you find out he's a fucking rapist who would drug women with benzoids so that they couldn't fucking say no. Like, I can see how that would be really destructive to their self-confidence, and you know, like, they don't have the same positive narratives that white people have. But then at the same time, you also have to understand, they've been trying to destroy our positive narratives too. It's not just a you thing, it's an everybody thing. We're all being oppressed. So, if there are any people of color, fucking hell, actually this is just for anybody. If you're being told that you're not good enough or whatever, you gotta remember you're a fucking god, essentially. Like, you are capable of this. Like, you are capable of this. Like, you are capable of creating your own reality. You are capable of creating your own life. And you just need to take that power. And the first step is to do. And the second step is to learn. And, you know, maybe read the Mahabharata. Maybe read the Christian Bible. Maybe read... I wouldn't really suggest reading the Quran. It's kind of boring. I've tried. Like, I got through 2 verses of the first surah, and I was just like, fuck this shit. Meanwhile, I open a Bible, any page, and I'm just like, holy shit, this is like what's happening right now! Anyway, I'll stop before I get too religious. I know there's a lot of people who don't want to deal with that shit on a political video. Alright, have a good one.